Hi, Annie.
Courtney, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Besides the fact that I'm melting in this heat, this excessive heat, other than that, I'm fabulous.
Opposites attract because I have
Yeah.
my windows open and I'm
The
happier than
only
can be.
ways that we are different, besides the blonde and the brown.
It's a constant fight with Joel. Like, I put the thermostat up to 74, 75, which I see like your eyes are probably going to bulge out of your face. And he's constantly trying to put it at like 69, 70, freezing me out in here. So I wanted to just bring up something that came up last month that I think can be really helpful for our listeners. I gave a talk or offered a mindfulness workshop to over 200 attorneys, and it was a webcast, so they would share through an app, and then the sharing would come through, and there were a number of messages or chats that came through that had a similar theme or a common theme to them. So the talk was on what are some mindfulness strategies for legal minds. So it was very much geared to a legal audience, but the what I'm going to share with everybody is something that can apply to whether or not you're an attorney, another professional, or a stay-at-home mom. It's something that we can practice and it can help us to step out of reactivity. In that particular conference, I was talking about how we can notice the ways in which our perception of the stressors in our lives determine how much stress we actually feel. And one of the participants, not one of the participants, but the first chat that came through was a woman who said, what really stresses me out is my husband and I work from our home, and we work in the same office space, like the same room in our home. And she basically was finding herself really stressed out just by being in such close quarters all the time
Yeah.
with him, and wanted to find ways to be less reactive, to find some ease and not say or do things that she was going to regret. And so I think this comes up for a lot of us, whether it's our significant others, or if we work in an office building, we have colleagues or bosses or clients who are really difficult, or maybe I know in the legal field, our adversaries can be really challenging. Or as you and I have shared, sometimes our kids, like we can find that they trigger us in some way, and the next thing we know, we feel really bad because maybe we said something that we regret, or at least in my experience, it's happened.
Exactly.
So there's a practice that can really support us to be in the present and to step out of reactivity so that we can choose how to most wisely or most skillfully respond. And there are guidelines that support us that are based on an acronym. So the acronym is PRO, PRO. And I'll just go through what each of the letters stand for. And this is one of my favorite practices because it's something that you can literally do on the spot, like in that moment, whether you're feeling some road rage because the person in front of you is driving badly, or you're noticing some frustration with your spouse, or you're dealing with a really difficult client. This can be called into use or brought into use right in that moment, and it can take like 30 seconds and make all the difference in whether or not you're feeling really agitated or if you're able to incline yourself in the direction of relaxation. But it also can be done as a formal meditation, which I'll share with listeners on Spotify so that you can go to the link. And if you want to do a formal meditation based on Pro, you can. So the first letter stands for pause. And
I'm done right there. It's so hard to pause. I can't do it. No, I'm just kidding.
no,
I
it's so true. It's
hard.
so hard to pause. And
Bite your tongue for a second and just
it is. It's really hard to pause in the fast pace of life and given how busy our lives are. But the pause, this first step or first guideline in this practice very much is mindfulness. Just, you know, giving ourselves a moment to notice how we are. And that can begin by just noticing, how are we in the body? Like when we're feeling agitated, we may notice there are regions throughout the body that get tight, whether it's the clenching of our jaw,
Right here.
your
It's
neck.
right in my throat and neck. Yeah. I like a lump in my throat so big that I almost can't breathe when I'm about to react. Something I'm about
Yeah.
to.
I don't even, sometimes it's not until I remind myself to, which we'll get to the next guideline to relax, that I don't even realize I'm like holding my breath. It's like,
Yeah.
do I breathe? Like, how am I still existing?
Right.
Because I literally like hold my breath. So we want to bring some awareness into the body and notice, how is it in the body? Are there any regions within the body that are holding on to unnecessary tension? So becoming aware of how it actually feels within the body, and also being aware of our thoughts. Like in the moment when we're frustrated with our spouse, or maybe it's a client or a child, what are we telling ourselves? And also noticing the mood state. What emotions are here? Is there some type of frustration? Is there, if we've been working long hours, maybe there's some sleepiness, maybe there's impatience. And remembering that as we're pausing and sort of checking in, that with mindfulness, we're cultivating certain attitudes, one being non-judgment. So on top of already being agitated with a person or a situation, we have a tendency to further compound our stress by giving ourselves a hard time for feeling or thinking a certain way. So the first step is pause. Notice what's here in the body, in the mind, and any emotions that are here in the moment. The next guideline is
Can I
R.
interject and ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I think there's a correlation between your inability to pause and your like childhood or youth in not being heard. Because sometimes my reactivity has to do with me, if I don't get it said right now, if I don't react right now in this moment, I won't be heard at all. So I need to react right then. And that's the problem, because I need to have more security and know my value and worth more,
Yeah.
so that you can pause and know you can speak later and still have the same effect.
That's great insight, because that may be sort of a communication style that you develop just because of what you experienced as a child. And we may still come into that, like when there's those moments when we're, I don't know, like I've been in a big meeting with other partners and associates, and I'm trying to get a word in. There's very much like, you don't want to take that pause, because if you wait another moment, but this is more about giving yourself the space, like by pausing before you say something or do something, it's creating a space to notice what's here, to step out of like autopilot and to sort of feel into the body. Because oftentimes we're just so caught up in our heads, and we fall into saying things that maybe we didn't necessarily mean in that way. So it's just a really great tool or practice that can create some space between whatever it is that's triggering us in some way or causing us to feel stress, and that space, hopefully the person that we're around, that we're speaking to, they're not going to leave the room, so that by the time that we have an opportunity to get through the 3 guidelines, that we can actually say what we want to say and be heard. But we can deal with the what if in a separate podcast episode on like mindful communication. That could be like a 12-week course in and of itself. But just for this pro practice, we would allow ourselves to pause and to give ourselves that space. That's what I know we talk about this a lot, like that muscle of the mind, but it strengthens the pause muscle so that it makes the difference of makes all the difference in whether we're falling into reactivity or giving ourselves that possibility of choosing wise ways to be with what is and respond most skillfully. So that is the first guideline. Then the second guideline is to relax from the mind to the body. So the first step, when we pause, we notice maybe our body, we're feeling certain areas of tightness throughout the body, or maybe we notice there are tons of thoughts swirling around the mind. And just to be clear, with pause, we don't have to like freeze our thoughts or get rid of them. We're just sort of noticing the landscape of the mind and the body. And with the relax guideline, we give ourselves the space and just put out an invitation to relax. So maybe with pause, we notice that, like for me, I tend to hold a lot of tightness in the chest area or the neck and shoulder. So with awareness and having that space in the pause, we can invite the shoulders to melt back and down away from the ears. Maybe our hands are like our hands are in clenched fists, so we can invite the muscles of the hands to soften. Maybe feel the body breathing, take a few relaxing sighs. So this relax guideline is really just an invitation to incline ourselves towards relaxation, stepping out of reactivity. But the deeper level of this part of the practice is we're not forcing ourselves. Like we don't, most of us don't like the feeling of being agitated or stressed out. So we don't want to force ourselves or insist that we feel calmer or more relaxed or less reactive. We're putting out an invitation and really allowing whatever is here in the moment, even if it's not what we prefer, just allowing it to be here. So that is the second guideline. And the last guideline, once we give ourselves a moment or moments to pause, to notice what's here, and we invite ourselves to relax, all the while remembering not to judge our experience, then we can more fully open to the present moment. And that can be the situation or the person who we're speaking with. We can get out of this thing called myself, or like being caught within our heads, our minds, and the stories, our inner narrative, the stories we tell ourselves. And we can open more fully to the person that maybe we're noticing they're the ones who are bringing us some type of agitation, but we can open more fully to the person, to the situation, and we can get a bigger picture of what's actually here in the present, as opposed to getting so pushed and pulled by our emotions and our thoughts. So in a nutshell, it's pause, relax, open. And when we take moments to allow ourselves to pause, to invite ourselves to relax, we can open more fully to the present moment. And it can really help us, even with those difficult people in our lives, it can really help us to feel more connected to them. Despite our differences, like we can feel a sense of connection when we're not so in our heads, when we're more curious and open to what's actually here.
I love that. I'm going to use that like right away, like in an hour.
And it doesn't take a lot of
When
time.
something happens, I was going to ask you if relax, like what you said, allow what is to be, non-judgment and an invitation to relax. I guess slamming a door doesn't really like fit in. like a really big, a nice door slam. It makes me feel.
Well,
Then I'm like, why did you do that? What are you, 10? So you have shame and judgment about it once you do that, but it feels so good in the moment.
I'm thinking about the muscles. I mean, after you push the door and then release, maybe the muscles are going to relax a little bit, but it's probably not going to land so well for the other people in the house.
No.
So I would say err on the side of not, but
maybe don't do that. which is great advice. But as soon as you were like, it just, I was being, but that is a go-to. I mean, especially in the past, when I'm reacting, it's just like, God, it feels so good to do. I don't want to yell. I don't want to, but I'll go like slam a nice door.
Yeah, and these are some of our behaviors. Maybe with pro over time we can
Yeah.
kind of unlearn them, but really just noticing even as you say that it feels really good. Like try practicing pro, like
Well,
in that
that's the
moment.
thing you said that most stuck with me through this whole thing was you even to stop and think about what pro stands for to me takes you out of the moment and
Mhm.
allows you to pause, relax, and open, right? Like it's even just thinking of what it stands for is the couple seconds that can make you go,
True,
right?
true. It creates that space, and the space can make all the difference. So yeah, you can give it a shot, and I'll share with listeners the formal guided meditation, which is a bit longer, but this informal pro practice can be woven into our lives in like 15
Love that.
seconds.
I love
There's
that.
and just for people who are really interested in mindful communication, because this came up amongst a lot of the attendees to that program that I offered, there's a teacher by the name of Gregory Kramer who wrote a book called Insight Dialogue, and he talks about pause, relax, open, and much, much more. So,
Great.
yeah,
Thanks for sharing all that, Courtney. That was amazing.
my pleasure. We're teaching everyone how to be pros in life, so give it a go.
Will do. All
All right, bye.
right. See you soon. Bye bye.